Hi everyone, welcome to Module 2 of Public Speaking. Today we're going to be going over rhetoric, and I've divided this into three sections. First, the history of rhetoric. The second are the 5 canons of Aristotle. And the third part is going to be over the communication process. So starting specifically with rhetoric and looking into rhetoric, rhetoric is defined as the practice of oratory or public speaking, which is what we're going to be doing in this class. Each of your speeches is going to be oratory, and it is a form of a public speech, whether it's informative, persuasive, or even a special occasion speech. It's a form of rhetoric. And it's a term that has multiple meanings. It's been defined across the board in many ways throughout history, but all of which relate to aspects of human communication. And Aristotle is the person that took off with rhetoric as a means of persuasion, as an available means of persuasion, which is what we're going to be looking into when we get to the 5 canons. But first, let's look into the history. Early rhetoric began in Greece in the 5th century, and Athens was the site of the world's first direct democracy, which means the people had the ability to vote for what they believed in, or even use rhetoric as a means to define the boundaries of their law and define who they wanted in power. The Greeks needed skills to help them with civil disputes, public policies, and establishing laws, which helped with these boundaries. Rhetoric was the way of doing it at this time. There are 3 different types of oratory that stemmed out of this. The first is forensic oratory legal speech. This is essentially the judiciary branch that we have today. So this is what defined the how, or the what. The how of a legal speech. So different terms, different things that we defined in everyday aspect of this is what this means and how it can be applied or interpreted. Then you get down to the deliberative oratory, legislative or political speech. This is more of the what. So in the legislative or the political speech, rhetoric was a way of defining what people wanted, what they wanted to become a law, and what they wanted out of the government to do, how they wanted things to be established and where they wanted it to go. And then we got to the epidictic oratory speech delivered in ceremonies, such as celebrations or funerals. This is really the delivery aspect of a speech. The way it's delivered is going to be completely different when it comes to a celebration like a wedding versus a funeral. The way it's delivered, a speech, you're almost saying the same things, talking about a person's life and how great they are and who they are to you, but you're going to be saying it in different ways. It's the delivery that makes the rhetoric of these speeches really, really important. So, important people in the history of rhetoric. Corax and Tisias is a great story that has been written down and told many a times, which happened in Greece. This was kind of the first of the sophists, which were paid rhetoricians to teach the ways of rhetoric and argumentation. So, Tisias is the student and Corax is the teacher. And Tisias takes Corax to court in front of a judge and does not want to pay for the classes he's been taking, and gives really great arguments as to how he has not learned the art of rhetoric. Therefore, he should not have to pay Corax. Corax stands up and says, because you are able to give this speech in rhetoric, it shows that I have taught you something, and therefore you have to pay. Regardless of the outcome, Corax and Tisias gives us a really good understanding of rhetoric and how rhetoric can be applied and what it means. And it gives us a lot of questions over what rhetoric really means and how you learn it, how do you teach it. And I encourage all of you to go out and read Corax and Tisias. It's a great story, and it will probably be part of our next discussion for video conference. Another thing that I wanted to talk about are the sophists. The sophists sophists came after Charaxanticius, or Charaxanticius could be the first of the sophists, but they're considered the utilization of rhetoric for argumentation, or paid teachers utilizing this rhetoric for either moral skepticism or suspicious reasoning. Understanding the greater truths and being able to question truths of society and question arguments in society, being able to teach the ways to do this, understanding of fundamental critical thinking when it comes to a type of argumentation. And they created clever arguments in order to gain what they want, a better society or what's better for them. Socrates came out of the sophists, and Socrates is considered our first philosopher of Western thought that discussed a lot of the teachings of Plato and our understanding of the difference between dialogue and rhetoric, and began the discussion of rhetoric. And Aristotle was really the one that came off of Socrates that really established this difference between dialogue and rhetoric. And he talks a lot about dialectics being the argumentation of truths and being able to talk about truths between more of a discussion based, but rhetoric is more of an argumentation based of unknown truths. Rhetoric is more the art of a presentation of a speech rather than it just being a discussion between individuals, but presenting an argument. And he was the one that really allowed us to talk and present arguments about things that should be questioned. And he did this through 5 canons, which I will discuss in the next video.